A warm welcome to you all, Jake Crulee podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another transmission. I have a special guest here, Joe Templin. And Joe, I am invigorated, inspired, motivated. I feel connected. I feel empowered um, by people like yourself. And we were speaking about before we started this podcast about how people can feel like they don't have a purpose in life and they're not serving and they're not creating and they're not doing anything good with their life. So it's being able to do a podcast with people like yourself who are doing those things and who are doing more. I get a kick out of it. I love hearing people's stories. I love hearing about success, how we can improve ourselves and become better people. So thank you so much for your time this morning or this afternoon, because you are in America, I believe. So without further ado, could you please introduce yourself for those listening to or watching this podcast?
Sure, Jake. And first off, though, I want to say thank you because energy is contagious. And not only the energy that I get from talking with people like you, but when we get a chance to interact, it's like just the excitement builds and then we feed off of each other and we can exchange ideas. And when we're done with this in 60 minutes or 90 minutes or whatever it is, and I walk away, I'm probably going to be so charged up I have to go running to burn off the energy. So I'm basically a human Swiss Army knife. I've had a very eclectic set of experiences and educations. So to try and make it really short and succinct, which is difficult, my mom was a nun. Yes, my mom was a nun. My dad was Army, built a consulting business. I'm the second of 6 kids, grew up out in farm country. As a child, I was severely asthmatic. At 10 years old, I died. I got better, obviously. I started doing Taekwondo at 12. At 13, I started college because my parents said 12 was too young to go to college. Eventually, I got my black belt, master rank, ended up winning an international championship in Taekwondo. In college, I ended up working for the Department of Defense, designing some really cool laser weaponry and stuff like that. Eventually, I ended up becoming an intel officer, which I can't really talk about too much. I started writing long ago when our family lost our family farm due to financial tragedy. I ended up going into financial planning, built a $1 million roundtable business, which is top 10% of the industry. Ended up reaching the level of top of the table in terms of production, which is top 1/10% in the world. Really got into psychology because of the martial arts and the financial planning, behavioral finance, all that. Did some time as an intel officer, as I said, and then all that really came together in terms of writing. I started ultra marathon running actually during COVID because I needed something to do with my free time. And simultaneous to that, I ended up writing Everyday Excellence, which became an Amazon Kindle bestseller. So there's lots of stuff for us.
Yeah, just a massive amount of accolades and things that you've done in your life. I'm always we're gonna potentially touch on everything you just spoke about, but I'm always interested, like individuals like yourself. I always like to hear about their childhood growing up and like into their adolescent years. And I'm trying to understand if their upbringing had anything to do with who they are today. So how would you describe your childhood growing up, going through to your adolescent years?
Well, Wilbur Wright, when asked about the success that he and Orville had, said that the best way to become a success is to be born in rural Ohio to good parents. And I was actually born in rural New York to good parents, but it's very similar. Okay. My mom, after being a nun, was an educator. And so she taught us never let school interfere with your education. She encouraged our curiosity. She bought us the bug jugs. She taught us to hotwire cars. Yes, useful skill later on. Distill alcohol and have this curiosity. My dad ran his consulting group, so that was a big influence on me in that I learned how to interact with individuals and be professional and because he ran his own business. I was learning aspects of running a business and components of that right along. I'm the second of 6 kids. As I said, I grew up out in farm country. So like during the summer, my mom would kick us outside and say, well, don't come back till lunch. There's the hose. Have fun, don't die. And so that's how we adapted to things. So that very strong independent streak, very curious. When I was, I think, probably 10 years old, maybe 8 years old, told my mom I wanted to learn everything there was to know. And she's like, well, the encyclopedias are over there, get to work. So that led to my having such a breadth of interests that I've studied and gotten degrees in, whether it's physics, finance, psychology, counseling, taxation, charitable planning, martial arts. So these are very, different areas, but then being able to cross-pollinate from them and take an idea, say, from music theory and apply it to martial arts, or a concept from physics and apply it to financial planning or psychology. So I have, as I said, this eclectic background. I call myself a autodidactic polymath as opposed to a Renaissance man, because I can't draw a straight line even with a ruler. Unfortunately, I did not inherit the artistic ability from my parents, but it's allowed me to be able to shift gears essentially to explore new areas very easily. So like I transitioned from financial planning into consulting to doing financial crime investigation because of just some natural mindsets that had been enhanced by my training and experiences. And then from there, you go on and into another arena. And so being able to draw from all of this has helped me as a coach and as a writer, because I've got lots of good stories. I've encountered a lot of really interesting individuals, and there have been a lot of lessons, a lot of them sort of painful at times, but there's been some pretty good insight that I can use to share and help other people out.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. I'm always, not always, but I sometimes do contemplate, like I see people who I used to go to school with, and I'm not denigrating the individuals, but some people, it almost seems like most people, like your generalized population, they almost stop learning once they leave school.
Actually, that's a very good insight. So I don't know what the statistics are in New Zealand, but in the United States, the average American after they get out of school reads less than 2 books a year.
Yeah.
Okay. Think about
Yeah.
that. Now, that might be skewed because I don't know if it takes into account audiobooks or if you're attending lectures, because like MIT's entire course catalog is available for free on YouTube for people. But it's really indicative that over a quarter of Americans actually think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. I'm not making this up. If I was making this up, it would be funny, but I'm not, so it's scary. And so and part of it is Dr. Carol Dweck did a lot of research, and only about 40% of individuals have any sort of growth mindset. And when we're little kids, I mean, we all learn to walk by failing. You stand up, you fall down, you stand up, you fall down, you stand up, you fall down, and you keep going and keep trying because you want that. And when you're in kindergarten, every kid is a genius in kindergarten, and they're all learning and they're doing new things and all this. And for some reason, over time, we stop expanding, we stop growing, we stop trying. And human beings are the only species on this entire planet that will not grow as much as the environment allows. Okay, people just like, I'm done. I had a manager once tell me, I don't need to read. My home office tells me what I need to know. And it's like, that is so wrong right there. Literally between YouTube, Google, and Khan Academy, and all these other things, people can keep learning constantly. In the library, okay, I've got a library card. They laugh at me because like every 2 weeks I get 2 or 3 more audiobooks. And they're sometimes they hand me 3 audiobooks at once, and they're like, so how long will this take you? I'm like, oh, I've got a trip. So let's see, 7 hours on that. Okay. Yeah, I need to order more because I'll be back next week.
Yeah. Um, I'm interested to know, like, obviously this is like a subjective question, but for you and the life you've lived and the people you've spoken with and the information you've digested, why do you think most individuals do stop learning? Are there like specific common reasons or traits that do appear?
Well, one, we're lazy. Okay, that's just
Yeah,
human nature.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
the
yeah.
brain uses it makes up about 5% of our body mass, but uses 20% or so of the energy. So to change a habit takes effort. To continue to learn something takes effort. So people are lazy and we're stressed. And a lot of people carry emotional damage from a variety of reasons and all that. So part of the lingering effects of PTSD or complex PTSD is an inability to imprint memories into long-term memory. So they just stop even trying in a lot of ways. Or their health is so bad. In the United States, 75% of people are overweight. Over 50% are clinically obese. And so if that's happening, there's actually a decrease in brain function and there's a decrease in energy because you got to move your big sluggy body around. And so energy's, physically is one of those things that the more you expend, the more you get. Like my friends who are runners, we go for a run, we're all charged up. We do something intellectually stimulating, we're all emotionally and physically even charged up. And so then, the more you give, the more you get in this capacity. But too many people have jobs that they hate. 75% of Americans hate their job. Okay. They are overweight. Their diet is empty calories for the most part. So they're not getting the nutrients that they need for proper brain or body function. They're not feeding their mind. They're not spiritually aware. I'm not going to go off on a diatribe here or any particular belief system, but
Right.
having a belief in something bigger than you is important because it gives you a set of guidelines and it gives you something to work towards. And so, Americans are the worst example on the planet, but other first world countries are exhibiting some of the same problems. Is it's too easy. And so if everything's easy, I can just walk over and get some, cheap calories from the fridge. Light is so inexpensive now that because of electricity that costs nothing as opposed to 200 years ago when it would take you a half a day to make the equivalent of a candle so you could have another 2-3 hours of light in the night. So everything has become so convenient, so easy. We can just go on our phone and get food delivered. We can go on our phone and get a date delivered basically by swiping left or right. I don't even know which it is.
Yeah.
But it's so easy that people don't know how to work hard. People have no resilience. So the instant that they meet an obstacle, they're like, oh, they're done, as opposed to having the mentality that Ryan Holiday talks about. The obstacle is the way. Oh, this is going to stop me. All right, challenge accepted. And you look forward to the challenges because challenges are what make us better.
Yeah, Ryan Holiday, an old boss when I was when I was a fitness coach, actually suggested I read that book, and I did read that book, and I think, yeah, we could take that philosophy into any like situation we come across in life. And one thing that I've noticed is when I do, like, even before this podcast, like before I do a podcast, I have nerves, because I want it to go well. Like I have all these expectations and intentions, but I just quiet in the mind and I come through, and then afterwards it's interesting, like just reflecting on how I felt beforehand, then having gone through it and then doing it. And then every time that I do it now, it just becomes a lot less, um, let's say scary, and it just becomes more flowy and it just,
You're used to it. It's like any
right.
form of practice. And so, like, I don't care if you're learning to play guitar or you're doing martial arts or doing podcasts. It's like the design on the front of the book. It's a nonlinear growth curve. The more you do it, the better you get. And you get better at getting better over time because of the metacognitive awareness. And so your improvements improve, actually. And so you get this nonlinear growth curve. And doing things that are difficult to you becomes a habit in a lot of ways. And you take the processes that let you do this and the increased confidence, the ability to face your fears, and you can then export those into other arenas. Jocko Willink says discipline equals freedom, because if you have discipline in one area, it carries over in others. You've got discipline to get up at 4:33 in the morning, like he apparently does every single morning, and work out. That then moves over a little bit into your food. It moves over a little bit into how you approach your work and other things. And excellence is a habit. The Greeks have a term, arete, for it. It's the mindset around it. I call it human kaizen, the continuous improvement. And if you can adopt the mindset, you see it pour over into other areas of your life. And so you're a little bit more conscientious in terms of cleaning up your dishes. You straighten up your space a little bit more. You're a little bit more polite to people. You take a little bit of extra time in terms of communicating, which then improves things within the work environment. And so by being able to work on one or two components of yourself, it actually then bleeds into these other areas. And that is one of the things that I'm trying to promote through the book and the podcast and everything else, is to actually reach 100 million people and give them that little nudge towards making better decisions in lots of ways, because of how that it will ripple out into the entire universe.
What are your thoughts on the people we have around us, and like the energy and the situations that we ourselves put ourselves in? Do you think it's important we are conscious of who we are spending our time with and investing our energy with?
Because most people are like the crabs in the bucket. And if you throw a bunch of crabs in a bucket and one tries to climb on out, theirs are all going to pull them back down. And so nobody can get out and escape. What you need is to surround yourself with people who are going to push you up out of the bucket, understanding that when you're at the top, your job is to reach down a hand and help pull them up to the top too. So if you surround yourself, if you fill that bucket around you with people who have that growth mindset, who want to improve, who want to get better, then it's going to happen. So an example that I use is, special forces people hang out and they reinforce each other. But an even better example, going back to Ryan Holiday, is he's a member of a writing group. People don't realize this. He's in a writing group with him, Mark Manson, James Clear, and GaryVee.
Wow.
So, these are incredibly successful guys. I think, of them all in terms of authors, I think Ryan Holiday actually has sold the least books out of them, and he's probably at like 15 million. And they're constantly trying new things, and they hold each other accountable, and they push each other, and they pull each other up. And so it's that sort of environment. Having training partners for your life, whether it's your running partner, your lifting partner, your martial arts partner, person that you practice your sales language with, person who helps you meal prep, having the most of the time that you spend with other people, be around people who are ready to give you tough love, who want to see the best version of you. That's how we lift each other on up. And unfortunately, too many people want the easy button. They want it convenient. They want to be able to eat the donuts and not have the consequences. They want all the fun without the responsibility that goes with it, the lack of accountability. It's really the Peter Pan or the princess syndrome. And it's gotten to the point where it's prevalent. It's everywhere.
Yep. And even consumption itself, it almost seems like on the face of it, we have become consumers more than creators. So I almost feel like people like Gary Vee, they have it so tunnel visioned in. It's almost like throwing a dart on a dartboard and hitting it on a specific spot. I often think, how could he improve? Like, how could someone like that improve?
Well, here's the thing. It's the difference between, I'm a big baseball fan, so let's use this, okay? It's the difference between being able to play in high school and playing in college. You're at a better level, okay? So, you're talking about Gary Vee being able to hit any spot on the dartboard. When you're a little kid, you're just happy to hit the dartboard. Then, you want to be able to, put it in a scoring thing, and then you're trying to hit triple 20s all the time, like I used to do. I hustled darts, but that's a different story. So you hone on in, and again, you get better at getting better. Your standards increase. After Tom Brady won a couple of Super Bowls, he wanted more. He had a non-satiable goal. Okay, and so martial artists have this, runners have this, musicians have this, authors have this, creators have this, and true champions have this. In that, most people, their goal is to make it to the NFL, and then they make it, and they're like, okay, I'm done. Because that's the goal, as opposed to then Kobe Bryant, when he made the NBA, he wanted to win a title. And he said the most depressed he ever was in his life was the day after he won his first title. Because he had a satiable goal. He had now won his championship. He had his ring. Okay? But then he basically retooled himself mentally, and the goal was not a championship. The goal was multiple championships. How many championships can I get? And so it's this evolution, and it's the continuous raising of the standards. And with athletes, they have a limited window. I mean, Tom Brady is 42 years old, and for some reason, the guy's still able to play at an incredibly high level. Maybe I'll take him in my fantasy football team this year. But eventually that's got to stop. But if you look, Pablo Picasso was still a creative force in art into his 90s. Pablo Casals, the cellist, was still practicing in his 90s. And when asked why, he's like, I think I'm improving. Okay? My dad retired at 80 years old only because of COVID. If it weren't for COVID, he'd still be continuing to grow his consulting business because he loved doing that. And so he, shifted into competitive bridge because he needed something to keep himself going intellectually. But it's this continuous growth. By the way, this is the reason why people retire and die. Because they're no longer intellectually challenged. They no longer have a reason to get out of bed. They no longer have something that they're working towards. So having that constant goal, there was a gerontologist from Japan, unfortunately, I don't remember his name, but he died at like 97. He was still working 3 days a week at that point. And it's having something meaningful to continue to work towards is always going to keep you engaged and growing. It's the socialization of having people around. It's the intellectual challenge. It's the physical, standard of having the consistency of I get up every single morning at X time so I can do this stuff. And it's all those different components that are critical in terms of keeping us productive. It's no longer for most people that you're doing backbreaking labor, and by the time you're 55 years old, you are incapable to do that anymore. So they put you out to pasture. Okay, even at 55, you can now have a second career on something that you love at that point and have a 25-year career from that point forward.
In regards to yourself, have you always had the mentality that you have today? And just like growing up, did you have aspirations of doing what you were doing today?
So in terms of my mentality is always evolving. Basically I kill off 1% of who I am every couple of days and replace it with something better, hopefully. So I'm continuously getting better and better and having greater vision and thought and all that. So I haven't always been at this level, but I've been moving in that direction because, as I said, when I was 10 years old, I died. I came on back. And so because of that, I don't waste time for the most part. I try and basically crack the bones of life and suck the marrow out, if you want to quote Dead Poet Society. My friends joke that I burn the candle at both ends and with a flamethrower in the middle. So I'm go, 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 go.
Yeah.
So in terms of doing what I want to do, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a mad scientist, a consultant, and an author. So I worked for the Department of Defense. I built weapons of incredible high intensity. So I guess I got the mad scientist part. No, I never built a Death Ray, but I did design an atomic bomb. So I guess there's that. I wanted to be a consultant, because of the freedom and flexibility. I wanted to teach. I get the opportunity to do that with work. I wanted to write. So pretty much I'm doing almost everything that I ever wanted to do other than be a Jedi Knight.
Wow. And did you have people who inspired you growing up?
I had a bunch of different people who inspired me. So like my 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Foster, God rest her soul, she said, young man, you can do more. You can be more. And so she made me start reading the New York Times. I had to read the magazine section on Sunday and give her a report on Monday morning. And, 6th grade, I'm like, what is this? Yeah. But, it raised the standard. It showed me a greater capability. And it, because of that, I started writing better. And, within a couple of years, I was at the Hopkins program because of it. And, eventually, publishing books and all that. So there's that. I had very good martial arts instructors who pushed me right along and peers that I've trained with. I've got like my running team. There's a couple of really good runners on there. And a lot of them are, people like me who just enjoy the camaraderie of it and we push each other. My cello teacher in high school, Herr Doblin, inspired me in a lot of ways. In fact, one of the things he taught me, and he died at like 86 and he was playing right up till the day before he died. And he said, I asked him about practice and he practiced every day. And I asked why at that point. And he's like, if I don't practice one day, I know. If I don't practice 2 days in a row, the critics know. If I don't practice 3 days in a row, the public knows. And so he practiced every day because his standard was higher than anybody else's. And so that's something that I've adopted, is having the highest standards for myself. And sometimes I impose them on others, which, gets me in trouble, especially in personal relationships, in that, I've been told over and over again by business partners, I'm not you, Joe. I don't want to work that hard. I don't judge myself that harshly. And that's great. There's a reason why they're not my business partners anymore, because, I don't expect them to be me. But if you're a full-time business with me, 4 hours a week doesn't cut it. I'm not going to work 70 hours a week so that you can work 10 and get the same benefit.
From your experience, is it more beneficial? And obviously, like, this could be like an open-ended subjective question here, but is it better to work a 40-hour week? Well, I guess I should preface this by saying, how can you be more productive? Like, how do you know you're productive? So Elon Musk works, sometimes he works 100 hours a week, but the average Joe would work 40 hours a week.
And actually, the average Joe's not working 40 hours a week. They're screwing around for roughly 15 of it. No, seriously, there's a lot of studies around there.
Right.
So the actual productive time that people have is somewhere around 4 hours per day. And I talk about utilization rate when I coach people within the financial planning world. And most of them, they're like, oh, I'm working 10 hours a day. And you look at what they're doing. It's like, dude, you kept 4 appointments for the week, right? That's 5 hours, maybe. You say you work 50. What do you do the other 90% of the time? And it's because we're inefficient. So, for example, one of the things that I do in terms of efficiency, I've got my calendar for the day, like, our podcast was scheduled for a particular time and things like that. And around that, the particular meetings and things like that, I sit there and I write down when I come on in, I review everything. I spend about 1 or 2 minutes thinking, reflecting, and everything. And these are the most important things that I need to accomplish today. Okay. And so, as you can see, I write them down and then I just go through, and I've got 15 minutes before this podcast. I got 30 minutes between these meetings. Oh, this meeting rescheduled. Okay. And then I just jump on and I start taking care of things and I can cross them off. When I'm done, I go David Letterman, I throw it in the garbage. And then I reassess, hey, what's most important next? And then I can get to those secondary and tertiary things. And as Tim Ferriss talks about in the 4-Hour Work Week, delegate, eliminate, a virtual assistant. Can I hire my 15-year-old kid to do this? Okay, can they do it nearly as well or better? So, for example, some of the stuff around the website, I can do it, but it'll take me 4 hours. It'll take my kid 40 minutes. All right, here's $20. You do that, and I just freed up 3.5+ hours of my time to go do $400 an hour work instead of $40 an hour. So, leverage like that. Having auto schedulers, putting Calendly on my website so that people can schedule me to do talks and stuff like that saves time. It saves resources. So too many people are dorking around. I know young financial advisors who they're getting ready to do their phoning to call 30 or 40 people to set appointments for the day, and they don't have the list run. They're trying to pull stuff. So they spend, 2 hours to do what should be a 30-minute job.
Yeah. You've done like Taekwondo, and you spoke about that earlier, becoming an international champion. What drew you to Taekwondo, and what were your biggest takeaways from doing it?
Taekwondo. So I was probably in like 4th or 5th grade, and a couple of kids on the bus were harassing my kid sisters. My kid sisters are small. I mean, they're not even 5 foot tall today. They say they are, but that's only with heels and their curly hair standing up. So they were being harassed by this kid. My mom signed them up for Taekwondo, and about a month later, I started. And for some reason, it just naturally fit me. With ADHD, sometimes you hyperfixate. And for some reason, Taekwondo appealed to me that way. And so it just became something that I did, trained all through junior high, high school, went away to college. I ended up studying with a new group, which actually my oldest son is named after my Taekwondo master. And that's where I went to just a whole nother level. I had a fraternity brother who trained too. So like he started training with me in the morning. So every morning at 7 a.m., I was training at the fraternity house. And then after I got out of grad school, I lived right around the corner from the fraternity house. So either I went to the gym or I went to the fraternity house at 5 a.m. in the morning and trained while guys were still coming back from the bars coming on in. I'd be down in the party room training in the morning before going to work, and then I'd train afterwards. And martial arts is one of those things like music. If you don't have talent, you're not going to be incredibly successful. But if you have talent and you don't practice, you're not going to be successful either. And it's one of those things. Malcolm Gladwell talked about the 10,000 hour rule. I learned about that decades earlier from my Taekwondo master. He taught us that you need to do a technique 100 times to do it. You need to do it 1,000 times to understand it, and 10,000 times to master it. That's why Bruce Lee said that he does not fear the man who knows 10,000 kicks. He fears the man who's done one kick 10,000 times. So, every single morning as part of my habit stack, as I get my day going, I do 100 punches minimum each hand of the first offensive technique I ever learned, a horse stance center punch. At this point, I've done that technique over 10 million times. That's why I'm still faster than guys half my age. I don't have to think about it. I haven't even mastered it. It has mastered me. It is part of my being at this point, just from doing it and doing it and doing it. And I'm not, physically gifted. I'm more mathlete than athlete. As I said, I was severely asthmatic. But by doing it, the repetition, and not just the repetition, but the intentful repetition around it, the practice with a purpose, and the iterations and iterations and iterations is where we unlock our greatness. And that applies to martial arts, it applies to music, it applies to public speaking, it applies to basically anything. We have the capability to exceed our expectations and our natural limits around.
Was there a moment during your Taekwondo career, and maybe it's still potentially going, that you faced adversity, or you really learned something about yourself, whether that was during training, you're pushing
Adversity
yourself?
is what it's all about, is constantly facing that adversity and doing the difficult thing. So yeah, I mean, I was practicing for training for a tournament decades ago, and I'm training against the guy who had actually won the tournament the year before, and I was the odds-on favorite. And he had just gotten a new set of martial arts pants. They were too long, and he slipped. And he threw a full side kick to the side of my knee, and my knee rotated 90 degrees the wrong way.
Oh no!
And it
Wow.
took 4 really big guys to hold me down and put it back in place.
Wow. That
So,
that sounds
there's stuff
grimacing.
like that. I actually failed my 5th Dan test. I'm the only person in my school who ever did. Now, I was eligible to test for 5th Dan 20 years ago. All the other 4th Dans in my school, it started after, like, martial arts after I had achieved that rank. I just never got around to it because busy with the kids and work, and then COVID hit and everything. So I actually was not mentally prepared to take this test when I went and did it. And I failed because I screwed up a form that I've done hundreds of times. In fact, one of the guys on the testing panel, a 6th degree, came up to me afterwards, and he's like, you know that form. You taught me that form. You taught me that form and took me through it hundreds of times. So I know you've done that form thousands of times. And we could have passed you because I've won the championships, I've done all the accolades and all that. He's like, but you would have been disappointed. Joe Templin would not have passed Joe Templin. It did not meet your standards. And that's why I failed you, because of the example that you set. Barbie's like, duh. But you know what? Yeah. It's absolutely right. And after like a couple of minutes and 1 beer, I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. And I actually thanked him for doing it, because I would have been disappointed getting that rank at that point, because I didn't truly earn it. I had earned it previously, but I had laxed myself. So at that point, I was not ready for it. And so when I got it, it was that much more important to me and that much more meaningful, because it wasn't handed to me. I had to go back and retool after all the injuries, the back injuries, the knee injuries, the broken leg earlier in the year that I had to come back from. Literally, I started retraining again from a broken leg 6 weeks before that test. Okay, so I could blame all that, but you know what? It comes down to the fact this guy here did not do what it was supposed to be ready, and it's my fault. And so I had to suck it up and do what needed to be done. And that is the sort of thing that martial arts teaches you. It teaches you the difference between hurt and injury. All right, you're just hurt, keep going, suck it up, buttercup. By the way, suck it up is something my mom taught me when I was a little kid. It's not what I learned in the fraternity or in martial arts. My mom told us, rub some dirt on it, you're not dead. Okay? So, being able to look at failure as feedback as opposed to being fatal.
Beautifully said. Did you ever go through a phase where maybe potentially in the beginning or to this day, you were too hard on yourself? And for people who are experiencing that, because I feel like a lot of people are too hard on themselves, but maybe in an unwise way, what advice would you give to those individuals?
So this is actually something that I struggle with, because I am such a critic of myself, and my standards keep pushing and growing constantly and in multiple different directions. And so the thing that we have to remember is that we need to tell ourselves, I am good enough, but I can be better. Okay? I'm good enough. I deserve love, but I can be a better person. I can be a better friend. I can be a better father. Okay, I'm good enough. I don't need to change me, but I can improve me. And so having that balance of acceptance, but non-acceptance. I was on a phone call actually with James Quandrell a couple of months ago. And we were talking about it, and it comes down to being happy, but not content. So I'm happy with who I am, but I'm not content with who I am. I can be a little bit better. I can make a couple of small changes. I can be, a little bit more patient with my kids. Having teenagers, that's difficult. So it's being able to say, yes, I'm happy. I can live in this moment and enjoy it, but simultaneously knowing I can make some small changes, some micro changes to be even better, and continuously doing that. And that's how you get that nonlinear growth curve in yourself, is saying, I'm good, I can be better. I'm happy, I'm not quite content with it. And so it's that balance, that tension that allows you to continuously grow.
You spoke about habit stacking earlier. When did you first come across habit stacking, and how do you implement it in your life?
So I first came across the term when I read James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. Being a physicist, I love the name, by the way. Yeah. But in terms of what he was discussing, it's something that I've done forever. So one of the precepts that we had in the fraternity was, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. So if you need, these flyers done for Rush, you need, this meal cooked, you need whatever, give it to the busy person, because they're going to figure out a way to get it done. And so as I was taking like 21 credits in graduate school, doing Taekwondo and volleyball, student senate, all these things, I figured out, okay, I need to be efficient with this. So literally I would roll out of bed and start training within 5 minutes. And it just became a habit of I get up and I work out.
Yep.
And when I started doing Ragnar's, it actually made it relatively easy, because you get sleep at weird hours, and sometimes you literally wake up and you have to go run 5 miles right afterwards. Okay, I can do that. I'm basically conditioned to it. So getting up and working out immediately was just something that I did. And then I started adding other things into it. Okay, I get up and I read for a couple minutes, then work out. Then I get up, I write for a couple minutes, brain dump out whatever's in my head. Then read, then work out. Then multiple workouts stacked with some other stuff. In writing the book, that's actually how I wrote a 750-page book in 6 months. Was I'd get up, brain dump, read, go for a 20-minute run or walk, sit down and start writing, and write 2 pages of the book. Even if it sucked and I threw out 90% of it, I still wrote 2 pages worth. Then go do Taekwondo. Then, depending on the rest of my day, shower and come into the office, or be able to sit down and write a little bit more, maybe research, whatever. But having those habit stacks that evolve, because as I said earlier, we get better at getting better over time. You learn what works for us. So I know I can't sit there and write for 4 hours at a time. It does not work for me. I can write for 20 to 30 minutes at a pop, but then I get up, need to walk around, stretch my legs, get the blood flowing and stuff like that. Then I can sit back down and do it again. And I can cycle like that for probably 4 cycles through, where I have to do something completely different to reset my brain. So you learn these things and you build your habit stack out over time. And when I was coaching some young business owners a couple of weeks ago, this guy's like, I've got this great habit stack and this and this. And I'm like, easy there, buddy. All right, let's start with waking up at the same time every day and, working out right afterwards. Because he wants to, I'm going to do like, these 20 LinkedIn messages. I'm going to eat this breakfast. I'm going to do this. I'm like, easy there. Okay. That's overcommitted. Wake up, one thing, whatever that one thing is. I don't care if it's reading every single morning, or if it's, you wake up and you work out, or you wake up and you write, or I don't care. Wake up consistently, same time, and make sure it's early, by the way, because people ruin your day.
Mm-hmm.
And then do one thing. Then once you've got that habit down, it might take 7 days, it might take 14 days, it might take 2 months, depending on how easily you adopt things. Then you can add a second thing. Then you can add another thing. And it might take you 6 months to build out your habit stack the way you want. But every additional thing you add in, because it's already being built off of a superstructure, as opposed to trying to build a castle in the air, since you're already building off that bedrock you already have, it's easy to add the next things in. So adding in, activity number 3, wake up, whatever, let's say workout, wake up, workout, read, wake up, workout, read, write. Adding in that next one only takes about a week, and then about a week for the next one. So it's easy to get, start evolving in that way. And again, it comes back to getting better at getting better, the nonlinear growth curve.
And what I've found is not having to make so many decisions in your day just makes things a lot easier. When to do this, what am I doing today? Like
we only
structure.
have a certain amount of mental capacity, and this is the reason why Steve Jobs had like 50 versions of the same outfit. Seriously, he literally spent no mental energy on deciding what to wear. Black jeans, black turtleneck shirt, socks, underwear. Oh, no underwear. I don't want no shoes. Okay. It was consistent. It was easy. There's a reason why almost every outfit I own, other than the one I'm wearing today, so it's sort of ironic, is blue or black suit, white or blue shirt. And then, okay, if I'm wearing a black suit, black or gray socks, wear a blue suit, blue or purple socks. If I'm wearing a black suit, these are my ties with black. I'm wearing a blue one. These are my ones with blue. By the way, I've got a whole bunch that can go with either one. So I just grab and go.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to go about things. And you've spoken a lot. I've done a fair amount of research on you, and you have written and spoken a lot about business and a successful business.
Mm-hmm.
For you personally, how would you define a successful business?
One part of a successful business is it has to be sustainable. Okay, so I see too many businesses that are one-hit wonders, where they got lucky as opposed to having the process. So, one thing I recommend anybody who's going into business or has a business, read the book, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. It's all about building the processes out. So whether it's a sales process, as he talks about a poodle clipping process, a pie baking process, everything, if you can have a system, again, it reduces the amount of decisions that you have to make. You literally have a checklist that you just go through, or better yet, going back to the Tim Ferriss, delegate, eliminate, automate, and location. If you can automate the checklist, or you take that checklist and you delegate it to somebody else, and they can do things, that allows you to do the unique things. Like, for example, I can't outsource talking on a podcast to you.
Right.
Well, I can outsource a whole bunch of the other stuff. So that means I get more time doing the most lucrative components, the things that I'm best at, my unique abilities like this. And so at this point, I probably spend 6 to 7 hours a day just talking to people, whether it's coaching, being on podcasts, things like that, and a couple of hours a day writing. The minutia, the crap that I always hated, I've basically been able to eliminate or delegate away most of that. So you need to have a process. It needs to be sustainable. You need to love what you're doing. Okay. And in all businesses, there's a whole bunch of crap that we have to deal with. But what you need to do is get as much of that out of the system, or at least off your plate. Because, I guarantee you the CEO of a major corporation does not go and book their own airline flights. Okay. They're not typing up their own memos. They're not cleaning their own waste basket. They're focused on the highest and best use of their time. And so being able to do that is one critical component. And you need to try and build the business so that eventually you can leave it if possible.
Right.
So
yeah.
in our businesses, because they're talent dependent, it's dependent on our unique talent. But if you've got a doctor's office, you should ultimately be able to swap one doctor out and put another doctor in. If you've got a lawyer firm, okay, and they're drafting as more than going in front of the judges, people should be able to come and go over 20, 30, 50-year period. And you have the processes, so literally a new one can step on and operate.
Right. And sorry, just my apologies if you can hear a chainsaw. I'm hearing a chainsaw going, a truck going. So there's a lot.
Not me.
Oh, great. There's a lot going on. Since the advancement of technology has like the foundational formula of a successful business morphed or changed with the times?
It's changed somewhat in a lot of ways. So an example that I use is that when I was a financial advisor, we had to take notes, partially for compliance reasons, and compliance gotten more and more and worse and worse, but also so that you could run the analysis for your client, and you could understand and all that. Okay? So I used to have the old dictaphones with the little micro cassettes. And so after every meeting, I would dictate my notes and give marching orders to my team of, okay, send this letter, these particular things in here, we want to run this analysis, all that. And the one assistant would type it up, and that would take 4 hours a day just to listen to all that and type it up and delegate it out. Okay. Then there was a service called Copy Talk that came about, where I was able to dictate it into the phone. So I'd call the number and I'd dictate it, and they'd use people in India typing it up. And the next morning, it would all be in my email. So I'd review it because there'd be some things, cut and paste it, boom, be able to delegate it to my team. When we did that, that saved them 4 hours a day. Okay, which allowed us to do other things. Now with Copy Talk, it's almost instantaneous because it's being done by AI as opposed to people. And so within 5 minutes, we have it. So 4 hours delay at $20 an hour of people time to do it, down to essentially instantaneous and outsourced, so it doesn't take any resources from my team. Okay, same thing with the computer. I remember that I used to have to run analyses at 10 o'clock at night because I was the youngest person, newest person in the office. We had 2 computers to run things on a 286. Now I can run 10,000 simulations in 5 minutes. Back then, I'd have to FedEx paperwork all over the United States. My FedEx bill was $1,000 a month, and I had to have 4 business days lead time to get things to clients. Oh, and if there was a mistake, guess what? Things going back and forth. Now we can have a Zoom call, and I can pull up the analysis, show them what's going on. They're like, oh, we need to change this. What about this? Real time done. Okay, yes, you're going to do this? Yep. All right, bang, DocuSign. It's taken care of. So technology, compliance has made things more difficult for almost every industry simply because we have to dot more I's, cross more T's. There's 500 pages of disclosures that nobody reads. That's only there for the attorneys to keep them in the business. I have attorneys who look at the disclosure agreements and they're like, I don't even understand these. And I'm a corporate attorney. What's a normal person supposed to do? It's gotten worse and worse. It's, not helping people out. They're hiring more regulators. They're hiring more IRS agents, to reinforce things that, literally the bad guys are still going to be bad guys and break the law. It's not helping people. And it's basically created levels of complexity that are pushing people out of business and not serving individuals. So there's that. You've got government forces which are actually preventing business from being done because of all the regulation and the hoops that have to be jumped through and all that. Simultaneously, you've got technology, which is allowing us to do what we need to do faster and better at a higher level. And right now, over the past 10 years, the compliance regulatory component has been much more powerful than the technology improvements. The technology improvements really came about in the 90s and the early 2000s, and that's when we saw a huge productivity boost. And the government and regulatory has really come in now, and so that's why you're seeing a decrease in productivity. So these two counterbalancing forces, and technology is not going to accelerate stuff too much more, because if it takes 1 millisecond instead of 100 milliseconds to run analysis, that doesn't save you much time. But if the government says, okay, we've got another 100 pages for your client to go through, that's going to layer on even more. So we need to have the concept of all this technology applied over here to the government to reduce the burdens that they're creating, or basically accelerate them and automate them, so that instead of having to spend 5 hours proving stuff, it can be done in 5 minutes, like is done internally with it. And so if we can get that, then you're going to see another wave of productivity among the business world, where that will directly impact the consumer in a positive manner. So I don't know if I answered your question there, Jake, but it was a great story.
You definitely did. In terms of business, because you're a mentor, a coach, a business expert. I almost feel like every market is deeply saturated, and I could be wrong. You may correct me on that, but how would one go about entering a specific business market, and especially if it is saturated, how can someone have a chance of just starting today?
So what I would do is I would join the professional associations and get a mentor and all that and learn it. And I would attack whatever market I wanted to enter in a completely different manner. Don't go head on, trying to go through the main door, come around. So if you line up 100 salespeople, I don't care what you're selling, widgets, financial services, knives, what have you, you line up 100 of them, and 98 of them look exactly the same, and 2 of them look different. Those 2 are going to produce as much as the other 98 combined.
Yeah, fair enough. And
so, instead of trying to be a clone of somebody else, be the absolute best version of you. Understand the rules of the game, obviously, whatever game that you're playing, whatever you're selling. Make sure you're compliant if there's all sorts of regulations and restrictions there. Have a process, but that process needs to be reflective of you and serve your clients best, and be you. Okay. So for example, one of the things is that I'm a dork and I do my things my own dorky way. And my clients are like, I didn't realize that I was coming in for a therapy session and a comedy show. And it's simultaneously both of it, but they love it because it's unlike anything they expected. They remember it. They appreciate the value. They know I'm being real and human. They can see that there's no BS coming from it. Okay? So it is authentic. And that's how somebody entering a new profession can make sure that they can be successful. Is learn all the rules, practice, make sure that you understand the technical components spot on and all that, but have fun and be you.
Yeah, definitely be yourself. I feel like that's one thing that would absolutely separate yourself from other people, is you being you, and maybe people will potentially gravitate towards you, because I gravitate towards certain teachers or mentors and their delivery style as well. So I think that's very important.
And for that salesperson,
right,
what they need to understand is they're going to piss off some people. That's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Not everybody is a good partner for you. Not everyone's a good client for you. Not everybody is good to date you. Okay? So my clients were all nerds. Doctor, medical doctor, I don't even want to talk to them because their mindset's different. Okay? Nerds, geeks, business owners, we speak the same language. We went to the same sort of engineering schools. We have very similar backgrounds in a lot of ways. So those were the people that I just gravitated towards. So you get your target or natural market, but also, I would just geek out with them. I mean, I'm drinking from my RPI cup. So, and it's an engineering school. When other engineers see that, they're like, oh, you went to RPI. I'm this year, blah, 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 blah. And we naturally connect within that. And, I use very nerdy phraseology, nonlinear growth curves and stuff like that, because that's just who I am. And some people, it bothers. Okay. My job is to triage. And people who are not a good fit for me as a planner or as a business owner or a coach or whatever, all right, fine. And be willing to say no, to be willing to say, all right, I'm not trying to accept everybody. Only about 10% of the people I interact with ultimately become good clients for me. And if they're not a good client for me, I'm not the right person for them, whether it's as a coach or a mentor or what have you. So 90%, all right, boom. And the quicker that you can understand that and be comfortable with it, that, not every girl is going to date you, that not every, client's going to hire you, then you can focus your time on learning what ones do like working with you and get more and more like that. So one of the things that I say when I'm training young people to potentially enter certain careers, it's like, you're going to eat tons of olives. You're either going to know that you hate them or you love them, because there's no in between the olives, right? And if you hate it, that's fine. Okay. Learn quickly, within 1 month that is not for you, and leave before it sucks away your soul. Like, happens with too many Americans. Or you're going to find out you love it. You're naturally inclined for it. You get amped up by it. And you know what? Then you go whole hog it.
Yeah, that's one thing I've contemplated before, is the fact that, a lot of people are unhappy in their jobs, but they stay in the job and they stay there for like 40 years. And I often contemplate, like, why didn't they move when they first began to feel unhappy? But it is what it is, I suppose.
Or when they became unhappy and they realized this is not for them, why didn't they start growing and expanding themselves and doing the things so that a year or 2, 3 years later they can leave? Start working on your resume, start getting additional skills, build out the network. So people that I'm coaching now, young entrepreneurs, I'm like, all right, you need to start building out your LinkedIn profile. You need to start getting 1 or 2 endorsements per week, so that it's not looking like you just game the system, but it's organic and it's expanding, and it's allowing you to get more visibility, but also to expand your site. And again, it's like, okay, what classes can you take? What skills can you build? What can you learn? Who can you talk to? So that it might not be now, you might still be stuck in the job that you hate, but you've got a 2-year plan to get to someplace better. But they don't want to do that. It's the same reason why people, don't go to the gym on a regular basis, or eat healthy for an extended period, okay, or continue to study, or they give up playing an instrument or doing martial arts after 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, because it becomes inconvenient, as opposed to, no, these are the steps I need to go through to get where I want to be in 2 years. So it's very different. If you have that stick to it-ness, you will make the little changes daily, weekly, monthly to be in the place you want to be.
Can you take me back to the moment where you decided that you wanted and you would begin ultra marathon running?
So that actually came about totally wrong in terms of how it. So I started doing Ragnars, which are 200-mile team relay races. 12 people on a team. You run 3 different legs. You run about 16 miles. About 7 years ago. And, I've got this running team of a bunch of crazy people just like me. We all wear running kilts. One guy wears a banana suit sometimes. It's a rolling party in a lot of ways. But we're also running, and we're actually somewhat competitive. Don't know how, but we are. And so then COVID hit, and all the races were canceled that year. So we decided that we had to do something crazy so we didn't go insane. So we put together a whole series of events. Like, we had a midnight 5K. We did a beer mile. That one, it was 95 degrees out. That one hurt. So
Yeah.
we did a virtual Ragnar where you'd call the next person up and they'd go and they'd do their miles wherever they were. They'd call the next one. We did one where we're sending the bracelets that you're supposed to hand off to the next person, sort of like the baton in the relay race, where we were mailing them back and forth. A bunch of them got lost in the mail, so that one died out. But we decided we were going to do a backyard ultra. So everyone would commit to doing 1, 2, or 3 miles for an hour, in an hour, and every hour you had to complete that. And we did this, not this April, previous April. It turned out it was one of the hottest days in the Northeast, 88 degrees and 100% humidity, brutal. And so, being the distance hog I am, I'm like, okay, I'll commit to 3 miles. And we started at 9 a.m. And I actually got it going a little bit earlier just because I wanted to get more miles in. And so we start, and then 3 miles, 6 miles, 9 miles, 12 miles, and everybody's dropping out around 27 miles, 30 miles. So I'm at Pat, I'm 10 hours in, 30 miles. I'm like, you know what? I'm over a marathon. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to see how far I can go. And I get to about 36. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to turn this into a double marathon. So, I hadn't intended to do more than about 26, 27 miles. Not a big deal. And I was completely underhydrated, didn't have the right nutrition, hadn't gone more than 30 miles in a day ever before. But my buddies just kept encouraging me. They're like, you can do this, you can do this. So I just kept going. And every hour I'd go on out and do my 3 to 4 miles. And when I got to mile 40, I'm like, all right, I'm doing a full double marathon because I swore I'd never do another marathon again previously. And from a mathematics point of view, 2 negatives make a positive. So if I did 2 marathons, then I did do a marathon, and technically it was okay. And when you're 40 miles in, you start getting a mind eraser, your brain starts bending, and you make weird decisions. So that was my weird decision. But also right around mile 40, one of my friends reached out to me, and she was having, all sorts of emotional issues. She was going through a real rough spot. So I ended up using the last of my mental and emotional energy to help her. I'm texting and calling her while I'm shuffling along, because at that point you're shuffling, you're not running. And so, I got through the last 12 and a half miles by focusing on her. So this is one of the things that my mom taught me when I was a kid, is when you're having a bad day, help somebody else, serve somebody else, and you'll feel better. So that's what I did with her during this. And then, so I finished my 52 and a half miles. And I'm in the shower and I'm drinking my beer because, shower beer, I definitely earned it. And, the blood's running down my leg because you pee blood at that point. That's just part of what happens. And I'm like, this was crazy. But you know what? As I'm drinking my beer, if I planned this slightly better, I could go further. So 6 months later, and I had trained and I actually planned my nutrition better and things like that. I ended up going out and I did 100 kilometers in 2.5 hours less than it took me to do 52 miles. And I felt better afterward. So what ends up happening is, again, you get better at getting better. I learned from the first one where, I didn't almost die, but I wished I would at some point. I was certainly past any normal human limits. But the second one, I was able to do that much better. And I was training to do a 125-kilometer race when I ended up breaking my leg. So I just a couple of months ago started amping up the distance. And actually I ran last night and this morning because I'm now allowed to again. So I'm training to do something called the hamster wheel in a couple of months, which is a 4-mile loop that you just go around and around and around for 24 hours.
Wow. And I think potentially people who are listening to this could think, wow, this guy is crazy, or why is he doing this? I want to ask you, what have you learned about yourself, like putting yourself through these amazingly...
What we can accomplish is absolutely incredible. Remember, I'm not a good runner. I hate running, by the way. Okay. And I used to like not want to admit it, but David Goggins admits that he hates running and he's like a real runner, unlike me. But it's one of those things that it doesn't take natural talent to be a long distance runner. It takes guts. It takes commitment of getting up every day to run. Okay, you can't just run 10 kilometers one day and then run again a week later. You have to do it every day or most days of the week. You need to pay attention to your nutrition and your hydration. You need to rest, which is actually really difficult for me. I don't rest well. But Kobe Bryant's trainer taught him that rest is part of the training process. So I actually forced myself to take an occasional day off and to get the massages and do the stretching and relax occasionally because it's part of the training. And so you do this and you can push yourself and you can achieve immense things. So when I have to do a 10-hour day for work, not a big deal. 10 hours is actually a light day for me. The other week when I got home at 2:30 in the morning, okay, I could have stayed in bed till 10 o'clock in the morning. I'd be completely justified. But no, I got on up at 6 o'clock. I slept in a little more than normal. Got up at 6 a.m. and went out and got a couple of miles in. So it teaches you that you can turn it on when you need to. And even when you think you've got nothing left, guess what? There's still something deep inside you can draw out, whether it's emotionally, physically, spiritually, to be able to get through whatever it is you're going through.
Yeah, that is something that I would definitely be interested in investing more in, because I do run,
so
but
go
I don't.
Running today.
Yeah.
It's that simple. You don't need a huge training plan. You don't need thousands of dollars of equipment. You know what?
Yeah.
You want to go running? Go run today. Okay? And when you think that when you're tired, you're ready to give up, give it an extra half a kilometer. If you consistently do that, then within a couple of months, you'll be actually thinking, you know what? I could do a marathon.
I think it was in September 2021 you published your book, Everyday
Yes,
Excellence.
The first iteration came out in September, and then it was republished in April of this year.
For individuals who haven't heard about the book, how would you briefly introduce them to the book?
So Everyday Excellence is a multivitamin for life, because we all have these different components in our world that are important to us: our physical health, our mental health, our spiritual health, nutrition, our occupation. We're talking about how many people hate their job. And there's parts of every one of those where we're missing stuff. And life happens, things change. So we need to be reminded of what we could do or shown the way initially. So the book is a daily reader. So every single day starts with a quote from somebody. Then there's discussion and analysis. And the reader is going to find what they need that day within the text. Okay, because we are all looking for different things. We might not realize that we're looking for it, but when we see it, we know it. And so every single day there's discussion and analysis that then hopefully brings the reader what they need at that point. And one of the big differences between Everyday Excellence and the other daily readers is that I have a bias for action. So every day ends with an action item, something that the reader has to do to solidify the discussion and the teachings of that day. It might be something as simple as smile at 5 people as today. And I like that one because it's simple, costs nothing, but there's a lot of biological and psychological rationale behind it. Or it might be as complex as writing down 10 reasons why you're upset with someone. And then going through and looking at and figuring out why you are. And then the big hard part with that one emotionally is saying, I forgive you for X, and crossing it off. And then I forgive you for this. And so you're basically going through and solving, forgiving them, which then brings forgiveness to you. So that one's a little bit more emotionally involved. But every single day there's something like this. So it takes between 2 and 5 minutes to do each day total. So I tell people, keep it in your bathroom. I'm not going to be offended that you read it in there every morning.
Yeah.
But you go through, you read the quote, you read the analysis, you do the action item, and then it's in your brain for the rest of the day. You're thinking about it, and you make small changes that, when compounded over days, weeks, months, the entire year, changes you. And then you can go back through and do it again, because there's a Stoic saying, no man can walk through the same river twice, because the man's different and the river's different. So I still read the book. I wrote the book, and I read it and do the action items every day. Some days it sucks. I'm going to throw it a bit. It's hard to do it. Like, that's right in the feels there. But now that I'm going through it, for the fourth or fifth time, it's like, all right. And I still see new things in the discussion and new ways to apply the action item to improve myself every single day. And so if I can derive good value from it, somebody who has never read it should be able to get a couple of good years out of the book in terms of their own personal growth and development.
Yeah. In regards to the book, so you wrote the book, you had it published, you had it on sale, you're doing meet and greets. What have you most enjoyed about the process of the book?
When I opened the containers and picked it up and held it in my hands for the first time, that was really cool. That is the ultimate moment for any author, unless they make New York Times bestseller list or they see themselves in life like that. But other than that, it's the chance to do what we're doing now, Jake. Come on and discuss. We discussed the book a little bit, but it's everything else around it. The lessons learned, the knowledge, the side things, and stuff that I've learned since then that has further expounded on what's in the book that we have a chance to discuss. And we came on into our discussion today with a couple of bullet points that we wanted to hit, but it's meant to be very free flowing. It's organic. And so this podcast is completely different from the hundreds of others that I've been on and the hundreds of others that I'll be on over the next few months. But it's creating a unique experience for your listeners where they can take something away from this. So, it's like if you have a candle and I have a candle that's lit and I light your candle, I have not lost anything. I have not given up any light. So it gives me a chance to come on and through you light hundreds or thousands of other candles and help them illuminate themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we'll wrap up shortly, but I know that you are a special needs parent. So I was just hoping, could you please share the diagnosis and how does your parenting style differ between kids?
Okay, so let's talk about parenting style because, we need to love each one of our children in the way that makes sense for them. Okay? And so my kids know that I don't have a favorite. I hate them all equally. They laugh at that. And as my youngest said, yes, you hate us equally, but you love us individually. I'm like, that's right, buddy. So, my oldest is Asperger's and bipolar. My youngest is ADHD and autistic. My middle one, who's supposedly the normal one, is the most like me. He's my mini me. So, of course, he is the most of the group because he is too much like me. So, those are their diagnoses, but they each have their special abilities, their special needs, whether it's a neurological special need or just emotional or how they need to be interacted with. And as I said, I was one of 6 kids, and my mom always said, you don't divide the love, you multiply it, and you give each kid the best that you can. And it can be extremely tiring, especially when they're on different schedules for school, they have different activities, and they're taking all over the planet. And then, they forgot their cello, so you have to bring it to school, or, hey, Don, I missed the bus. Can you drive me? It's 10 degrees below zero. And you're trying to run out the door to go to your meeting, and you're like, I want to strangle you. But you know what? Our parents did it for us. We do it for them. And this is our obligation and responsibility to develop them into good and independent young human beings.
What do you find most rewarding about being a father?
You know what? This is going to sound weird, but my kids are all comedians. I mean, the one-liners that come out of them, I'm like, oh yeah, you're my kid. So this is one of the things. Facebook is great for this because I decided I was going to capture and post these things there. So there's all these comments of, child 1, age 2.7 says this, child 2 does that. And so my oldest is 17 and a half. So I've got 15 years of these things popping up randomly, reminding me of, my son saying babies need swords to stab eyes, or, my now almost 18-year-old, when he was like 12, saying, you know what, Dad, you should get some duct tape so you can duct tape my mouth. And I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. Inside my head, can't say it outside. But things like this. And so when they are grown and I can share all of these with them, and even better, I can embarrass them with their girlfriends with them.
Yeah.
And 25 years from now, when they've given me grandkids and grandparents and grandchildren are allies because they have a common enemy, I'll be able to share these things with them and say, look what your daddy said.
Absolutely.
So it's even better than the embarrassing naked baby pictures because they had no control of that. This is stuff that actually came from their mouth. So one of the coolest things about being a parent is seeing them grow and develop into their own personalities with their own sense of comedy and being able to do different things. My middle one is a violinist, and when he was in 4th grade, it sounded like strangling cats. When they got to 7th grade, it was actually somewhat passable as music. Now he just finished 9th grade and it actually sounds sort of good. And he is enjoying playing that. So in another couple of years, it will actually be really good. And watching them grow and develop that way, whether it's as a computer programmer, as an artist, as a runner, as a musician, it is the process of seeing them discover what they enjoy and bringing that out of them and seeing them ultimately achieve their own excellence.
How do you go about, because you have these great expectations of yourself, how do you go about managing that with and we've spoken about business partners, but how do you go about that as a father?
Oh, this is actually, I got good insight on this. So, my kids are wicked smart. They're going to be able to, they could ace any test. In fact, my one kid screwed around the entire half of the year, failed his English class, but then got a 95 on the final. So they passed him. I'm like, wow. I want to kill you for that. So my kids know I'm going to ask them 2 things. And it applies to whether it's scouts, sports, music, school. I care about 2 things: effort and attitude. Did you give your best effort consistently? And how was your attitude? If you're sitting there in class and you're disrupting things for other kids, I'm upset. I don't care if you got 100 on the line. You interfered with other people. If you helped other people, that's good. If you gave good effort and you barely passed the class, I'm okay with it, as long as you really gave good effort. So effort and attitude, that's all I care about. And so my one kid was bragging about how well he did on a test before school ended for the year. And I look right at him and I'm like, you know what I'm going to ask you, aren't you? He's like, yeah, my effort and my attitude. My effort was good. I did this and this and this, and I showed this and that. And my attitude was good for this reason. I'm like, awesome. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, that's great.
And
thank
so
you.
If they have that effort and attitude, then they can take that and apply it to be successful in any area. And that ultimately is what we need to be able to do as parents, is to give our children that sort of structured vision and standard. And then we don't have to worry too much.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I hope parents who are listening potentially, implement that into into their lives, into their parenting relationships. So the final two questions is about self-celebration and allowing me to celebrate with you and allowing the listeners to celebrate alongside you as well. What are you most proud of doing in this life?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I
Yeah.
gotta think about that one. This is gonna sound bad if I say not selling my kids to the gypsies. But all I wanted to be was a good father. So I had high standards from my own family and everything. Being a good father is not just being the dad that's at the ball games. It's not just being the one who helps with the homework or teaches them to cook or, like teaches them to drive. It's across multiple parameters. So if my kids continue on the path that they're on and become good, independent leaders and human beings, and so, I could have helped contribute to that because I can't take full credit, nor can I take, deny any responsibility for the outcomes. But if they continue to do that, that'll be something, that'll probably be what I'm most proud of.
And the final question is, what is your hope for the world and future generations?
My hope is that we can continue to evolve in terms of being more tolerant of each other, more open, more accepting, continue to use technology, continue to raise people out of poverty, but simultaneously go back to having that personal responsibility of we all have rights, but every single one of them comes with an equally balancing and important responsibility to the planet, to others, to ourselves, to our families, to our future. And so if we can have that sort of balance, rights and responsibilities of growth and innovation while still maintaining some of the traditional belief systems and values of, family and faith and what have you, if we can get that, then literally the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Joe Templin, Everyday Excellence. Thank you for your wisdom and your insight, and thank you for your time, and thank you for showing up today. I really appreciate it, and I've taken a lot away from this conversation, and I hope that others who are listening can take something away from it as well. So thank you so much for your time.
Jake, my friend, thank you. Be excellent and grow today.